Praise the Lord, guys. I'm Shaw Greenhorn. And he said unto them, Be ye not affrighted. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. Behold, he is risen. He is not here. Come see the place where they laid him. Now go your way and tell the disciples and Peter, He goeth before you into Galilee, and there you shall see him as he said unto you. So they went out and quickly departed from the temple, trembling and were amazed. Neither said they anything to any man, for they were sore afraid. Now the first day of the week early, when Jesus had been risen, he appeared fierce unto Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast seven devils. And she went and told those that had been with him, as they mourned and wept. All right, so the story is progressing more, towards our hope, towards, the reason that we, have hope. We serve our risen Savior. We serve one that He walked the path, showing us the way to go. And He didn't use it by words, as a lot of these other, religions and faiths would, do. That, it's all words, and they try to lead you somewhere, where it really hasn't been demonstrated that even their hero of their faith, that he successfully walked, this path. But, Jesus, He is the way, the truth, and the life. And, we pick up our cross, we deny ourselves, and we follow Him. And in this moment, we really see, hope being revived and rekindled. As we see, the disciples, they're mourning and weeping. It's nothing going on positive in their minds. No matter how many times He told them, before, behold, I go before you into Galilee. No matter how many times He told them that He would be killed and rise, in 3 days. But, you got to understand that the love they have for Him, that He is much more than a teacher or a brother. He's much more than these things. And I guess in some way, if you look at it, you can see it as a positive thing. Because if they were able to receive His words that, behold, He goeth before us and He shall be risen, and they were, leaning on this, then, the emotion would be missing, the emotional connection. We know that in the society we live today, relationships, they form and end so quickly, especially marriages. The love of the old days of our grandparents and great grands, is non-existent today. Bible says that in the last days, the love of many shall wax cold. People that loved in the old days, they loved for real. They were dedicated, they stayed, they sacrificed. Now it seems as if at the slightest, inconvenience, people are ready to call it quits. We live in such a cutthroat society. It seems as if, integrity and honor, love, kindness, charity, these things, the fruits of the spirit, and it just goes to show you that, at the rapture, that it's going to be such a huge difference, between the wheat and the tares. Because even as I'm describing all these, characteristics and traits, unto you, they're still true people of God. Even though some of this, it does, permeate, into them and corrupts them somewhat. But on a whole, they're able to maintain at least some decency. I don't believe we serve a God that, with everything that's going on, that He would expect us to be completely untouched by all these things that permeate, us, that we're born into, when we see, we grow up into. Everywhere you look, there's, hardly any reinforcements, to be honorable. It's just a dog eat dog world, and you take heed, lest ye yourself, be consumed. So I say this, that disciples, mourning and weeping as they are, the positive, that you can take from it is that the love that they had was genuine. They lost Him. He was crucified. He was, betrayed in such a way. And He was taken, killed, put to death. This affected them on such a deep level. They weren't even able to draw back on logic. They weren't able to remember all the promises that He made. Even doctrine that, He was to be crucified and killed and rise. And that's the whole point of the faith, is that we serve a risen Savior. But, just the love that they had for Him. And, apart from them unable to receive, says that He gave them, that He told them what to look for. I counted this fashion of them being authentic, them being real, true people. Because like I said, in today's society, in divorces, people don't cry because the love is gone or it's broken or it's ending. They cry because of change. They cry because they know that it's a transition. It's, the right reasons why they should be crying, they don't. Because, you would have to have this kind of heart to be there in the first place. We see Mary's, being featured here, them stay steady in the course. But, it's always a woman's job to be a caretaker, a mother. And this, what they're doing, is more nurturing than anything else. That's how a mom would love her child, her son. How do we end up right here? So we see them speaking to man, the young man clothed in a full white garment. We just saw him crucified, cry with a loud voice, giving up the ghost. The centurion marveling when he saw him, cry and give up the ghost, saying that this was the Son of God. We see Joseph of Arimathea coming boldly onto Pilate. He also waited for the kingdom of God and asked, boldly, for the body of Jesus. We see, Pilate checking by the centurion, see if he were dead. And when he knew it, then he gave the body to Joseph. Joseph, he bought fine linen, took the body down from the cross, wrapped it in the linen, laid it in a sepulchre hewn out of a rock, and rolled a great stone upon the door. Then we fast forward to where we see the woman, watching afar off, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Joseph, and Salome, and many, which followed him, ministering, unto him from Galilee, and, many other women which came up with him unto Jerusalem. We see, then fast forward to the first day of the week, where they, brought sweet spices to come and anoint his body, heading to the sepulchre, for they had seen where he was laid. Them, bringing to remembrance, the huge, stone that was rolled to the door of the sepulchre, asking who would roll it away. Then beholding afar off that it was rolled back, because it was so big they could see that, even from afar off, that it was rolled away. Them walking in and looking to the right, beholding this, young man clothed in a long white garment. And then, we pick up here where he speaks unto them. So now, in other gospels, it is given that this is an angel, and that his countenance was described as lightning. Imagine looking at lightning, sitting there, walking and talking, interacting and communicating with you. And we can see, the general, emotion of just, fear, surprise. We've never seen all the miracles that we've seen Jesus do, apart from when he was transfigured, and when he walked on the water. This right here is something completely, just all the way out there. And they, respond in queue, because, who's gonna believe them that they saw this? They're in such a state of, shock and disarray. Who's really gonna, be the one to point all these things out to them? So the message of these, scriptures, is to show, greatly the backing that Jesus has. There was a instance in the Old Testament where Elisha, where the king of Syria was getting ready to invade Israel, and, those around him were getting fearful. And he prayed a prayer saying, Lord, open their eyes that they may see that those that are with us are more than, those that are against us. And their eyes were open, and they saw all kinds of, angels and fire chariots in the mountains, covering the mountains, ready to do battle. Even though it's not said here in Mark, when, I believe it was when Simon Peter struck up the servant of the high priest's ear. Think ye not that I can now pray to the Father, and he give me more than 12 legions of angels? But then how then would the scriptures be fulfilled? 12 legions of these guys, as menacing as they look. I don't think it would take more than one of these guys to completely handle all these guys, much less a legion, even 12. We see even the angel bringing to remembrance even a promise that he made. He got before you into Galilee, as he said. When did he say this? He said this after the Last Supper. After he said, one of you shall betray me. They each began to say, is it I, is it I? Then he said, it is he that dippeth his hand with me in the dish. Then after that he did the communion. He took the bread and broke, this is my body. Gave them the wine, this is the blood of the new covenant. They sung a hymn and went out to the Mount of Olives. And it was right then he began to say unto them, all you shall be offended this night because of me. Because it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after that I am risen, I go before you into Galilee. Right before Simon Peter, started rebuking him, saying, though all men should forsake thee, I would not. That's when he gave him the prophecy that before the cock crowed twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. It was right before he gave him that prophecy. Before the crow twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. Because when he told them that we go up and I am betrayed, to be killed, they got, so, sad as usual. This was actually given to get the wheels in their minds rolling, because he's learned time after time that it's like they get sucked, they get lodged, somewhere, and there's no dislodging them and they can't move. So this was given really to get them thinking. We see him appearing first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he cast 7 devils. Now, if you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where she is encountered, her story is not given. Her story is not told. Only the aftermath, that 7 devils were cast out of her. Like how they give the story of the woman with the issue of blood, that behold, she saw him. She said, if I but touch the hem of his garment, I shall be made whole. And she pressed and she touched, and she was, felt that her issue was dried up. Or even blind Bartimaeus by the wayside begging, as they passed, he asked who it was. They told him, Jesus, Christ of Nazareth. Passing by, he started to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. They told him to shut up, to hold his peace. Her story is not given anywhere. Only afterwards they'll mention her. He said, by the way, out of whom he cast 7 devils. A parable is given, by Jesus. And it's the same, when he was in the house of Simon the leper, when the lady poured the alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious, on him. Jesus, he told the whole scenario to Simon Peter when they were offended at her. They were saying, well, if he knew what manner of woman she was that touched him, that she was a sinner. And some Bible scholars will reason, even though we have no proof, they can only speculate that this lady that broke the box of ointment on him was in Mary Magdalene, out of whom he cast 7 devils. So he told a parable that Behold, I came to your house. You gave me no hug or kiss. And this woman, she had not ceased to kiss my feet. You gave me no water for my feet. She used her tears to wash my feet and her hair to dry them. So her sins, which are many, are forgiven, I say unto you. For he that, is forgiven little, loveth little. But he that is forgiven much, loveth much. And he even gave a second parable that, a certain creditor, he had two debtors. One owed him 50 pence, the other owed him 500 pence. And when they had nothing to pay, he forgave both of them. Then he asked Simon Peter, which one of them will love him more? And he answered correctly, the one that he forgave the most. And Jesus said the same thing. He that loveth little, he that is forgiven little, loveth little. But he that is forgiven much, loveth much. So Mary Magdalene, out of, cast 7 devils, she stayed true all the way. Here she is. And he appeared first unto her, not unto Simon Peter, or James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who we always took with him to the most, secret missions. When he was transfigured, he took them. When Jairus' daughter was dead, and he didn't want to take anyone because he didn't want their doubt to get in the way, he took these 3, Peter, James, and John. He didn't appear unto them. And I believe that this just goes to show that, God, he looks for faith. Faith without which is impossible to please God. For he that cometh unto him must believe that he is a rewarder of them that do diligently seek him. Them being in all their mourning, where was faith? Not saying that they were faithless, but one could ask the question, where is your faith in all this mourning? Mourning to the point of being unable to even act, to move, or to think. They're unable to do anything right now. But here comes Mary Magdalene, trotting, along the way, moving, in the parable of, the talents. One was given 5, the next one was given 3, the last one was given 1. He that be given 5 went out, traded, got 5 more. He that be given 3 went out, traded, got 3 more. But he that, was given 1, he hid his talent in the earth. Ultimately, the Lord said, take the talent from him and give it to him that had 10. Why? For to him that had shall be given, and he shall have abundance, but he that hath not shall be taken away. And right now, Mary Magdalene, with her faith, she's going. And to tell you the honest truth, this angel, he's saying this right now, that he goeth before you into Galilee, as he told you. It does not comment that these women were there at the Last Supper, or even went with him to the Garden of Gethsemane. But we know it also said that, they followed him afar off, even ministering unto him from Galilee, and many other women which came up unto him unto Jerusalem. So, by that, mention, they might have been there. But I would wanna raise the question. They might not have been there when Jesus, said this out. He said this to the men. It's the men that he told that, behold, after that I am risen, I go before you into Galilee. So these angels saying this unto these women, were they there is my question. Just having finished the Last Supper, going to the Garden of Gethsemane to where he prayed, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Alright, so let's get into these scriptures. It starts out saying, and he answered and said unto them, be not affrighted. You see, Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified, behold, he is not here, he is risen. And behold, the place where the Lord did lay. So he told them to not be affrighted. Because when they walked into the sepulchre, they looked to the right, they saw him. Having never seen anything like this before, they were, deadly afraid. I asked some questions in the last video. Is this, good or bad? A being of this nature, there's no doubt he can do to you whatever he, chooses without God's, unless God intercedes. The strength and the might and the power they had when David sinned and numbered Israel, and God gave him 3 choices. It was 3 years famine, 3 months fleeing before the enemies, or 3 days of pestilence. He chose 3 days of pestilence. The Bible says that he beheld the angel of the Lord, suspended between the earth and heavens. Just one angel with his sword drawn. 70,000 men died in just a couple of hours. What could this angel do to these women here? They don't know why he was there. Was there just a battle? Who knows that? There's not a angel that was left behind. Maybe by the good side, maybe by the bad side. He was just delivered into the hands of the prince of the air, and he just crucified him and did whatsoever he wanted. He spit upon him, he mocked him, he taunted him, smite him with the palm of the hand, saying, prophesy, who did smite thee? This, his presence can ask so many questions, and until, you speak to him and get some sort of angle on what's going on. Anybody's guess is as good as anybody's guess. Anybody, anything can happen at this moment. So he said unto them, be not affrighted. There was a different time back then. Back then, if a person told you, be not affrighted, you had reason to believe them. But in this, heartless and cold society, the love of many waxing cold, men being lovers of themselves more than, the lovers of God. So, he begins to break it down for them that you seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. Now, you know how he got the title Nazareth. It was when he was born. And the 3 wise men, they came looking for him. But they passed by, was it King Herod or or Pontius Pilate? I believe it was King Herod. And they told him that they come to seek, the new king, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus who was to be born, the Son of God. And he said, when you find him, bring me word that I may come and worship him. When they found, Jesus lying in a manger because there was no room in the inn, swaddling, they brought their gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then when they left, the Lord, he warned them by dream to not return to Herod, but to go the other way. When Herod realized that he was mocked of them, they didn't return. Then he gave the decree to kill all, male children under 2 years. Joseph and Mary being sent into Egypt in a dream by God. When this king died, they were sent word for him to come, for them to return. But then, on their way back, they heard that his son, this king that wanted, to kill him, that his son was reigning. So they went to Nazareth, and that's how he ended up being called, of Nazareth. So from Egypt to Nazareth, on the run. So, you seek him who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. So, hearing this from this kind of, being, creature, this kind of creature, this angel, no doubt you're more likely to believe it. If it was a man telling you, then you could have your doubts whether you knew this man or not. I don't know, it might make you believe it more or less depending on if he was of a reputable character, if he was trustworthy. But seeing this miracle before you, no doubt. And that goes to show you, because when they went to tell the disciples, nobody wanted to believe. Even Thomas said that unless I see the nail print in his hand, put my finger in his side, I will not believe. I need to see that it was him that was crucified. But I will ask Thomas this: Thomas, you were not at the crucifixion. If you were at the crucifixion and you saw the nails in his hands and then pierce his side, and you could believe, then you could know that that happened to him, right? Thomas, he's such a doubter. How could you come up with this reasoning that unless I put my finger in this, unless I see the nail prints? I mean, understanding that crucifixion, it involves these nails, and he was crucified. But Thomas, you weren't there, you didn't see. So now you're coming saying that, unless I put my finger in something that you did not see happen, unless you can do that, then you won't believe. So, the disciples themselves, when, these Marys came and told them, they did not want to believe. Simon Peter and the other disciple, they ran to the sepulchre to see. Now, Jesus' body is not there. And they did behold where it was laid. But, the credibility that this angel gives, just by his presence, because, I mean, if it was a man, it could be any story that they were told. They hated him so much. Who knew if they were to take the body and go desecrate it, like, cut off the head, skin, take off the skin, take out the organs, who knows what they would have done. They hated him so much. If it was a man that would have told the Marys this, but the credibility that it gave, just by his presence. And so he told, them that, he is not here, he is risen. And he goeth before you. Come see the place where the Lord lay. When, Joseph of Arimathea, when he took the body, it is said that they beheld from afar off where he was laid. So now here he is showing them the place where he lay, hoping to give more credibility that he was actually in there. So he was in there. So he did rise. So he's showing them that he rose from this spot. All right, so the next one says, "No, go your way and tell Peter and the disciples that behold, he goeth before you into Galilee, and there you shall see him, as he said unto you." So now, like I said, this Last Supper, he left from there, then he went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And that's where he told them this. Like I said, all you shall be offended is not because of me, for I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after that, I am risen, I go before you into Galilee. Then Peter started to rebuke him. Then he said, "Simon Peter, before the cock crowed twice, thou shalt deny me thrice." And you don't get the feeling that the women were there, because this was very late at night, because it was not far away from the cock crowing. Who knows if they were there or not. But the angel, he's helping them. They're not in such a good place right now. So, in this moment, understand that God is giving a visual to what he does, all day with his people. With his people, his called, his chosen. When the children of Israel came out of Egypt, they were led by a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. When they made the two molten calves in the wilderness, when Moses went up into the mountain to get the 10 Commandments, God, he was so frustrated. He said, behold, I will send you an angel, and he shall bring you into the place where you should come. Be careful that you obey his voice, because he will not pardon your sins. And my name is in him. Now, they did not get to physically see this angel, but, he led them. Just, for any story where a person was led somewhere, Joseph, I imagine, when he was put in that pit, if not before, at least before, an angel, was there guiding him. Guiding him to Egypt, to the Ishmaelites that bought him, guiding him to be sold to Potiphar. Now the wife, she did that on her own, desiring him and even telling lies on him that he tried to force her. But then when he was in jail, an angel was there giving him favor, leading him. When the butler and the baker dreamed the dream, guidance again to interpret it. When Pharaoh had the dream, no doubt the angel, so I can sit here and list 100 stories from the Bible and show you how an angel led, every step of the way. But they were unseen. So now understand that this is a glorious moment. This is, not the others were not, but this is the Son of God who was just crucified. And the disciples, they're taking this so hard. And remember, they're the ones that's going to carry the gospel when he leaves. We see the Holy Spirit being given on the day of Pentecost, where they, prophesied and spoke in tongues. So here, he visualizes what he does all day, giving a more clear visual of this angel that, is guiding and giving them these instructions. So he says, tell the disciples and Peter. So, he gives Peter a special mention because, he took it the hardest. Remember, when they came and took him, he took the sword and he cut off the servant's ear. Remember, it was Peter that followed him when they took him even to the palace of the high priest, even going inside the palace down in the lower parts, warming himself by the fire with the other servants. Them coming unto him saying, surely thou was also with Jesus. He denied 3 times. Then the cock crew. So the next one says, and they went out quickly and fled from the sepulchre, trembling, being amazed. Neither said they anything to any man, for they were sore afraid. So after being given these instructions, they make haste. Still, leaving to go faith, carry out the instructions they were just given. So they receive this message and they head, their way. Not speaking to any man on the way. A story in the Old Testament is given. It was in the days of the kings, I believe. The prophet was given an errand that he was to come and deliver a message. I forget to who. It was to the king. It was in the days of the king. And after delivering the message, he was supposed to leave the opposite way he came. He was not supposed to return, the same way that he came in, to leave on the other side. Speak to no one, eat nothing. So now an older prophet, another prophet that was kind of retired, you get the sense that he was retired, upon himself to go and seek out this man. He rode a donkey and went searching for him. He asked everybody, by the way, where he went, and he found some people that were able to tell him where he went. And he found him and he spoke to him. He said, "Come back to my house and eat." And he told him, the Lord said, "No, I'm not supposed to go with anyone. Not supposed to eat anything." But then he lied to him, telling them that the Lord appeared unto him and said it's okay for him to eat. So then he took him back to his house, and after he got done eating, then this older prophet, the one that lied, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and then he prophesied, saying unto this man, because thou hast disobeyed the voice of the Lord, when thou art, departed from here, a lion shall find thee and slay thee. As soon as he went out and he was on his way, a lion, found him and killed him. And it was a sight because the lion, it didn't eat him. And the lion stood right next to the donkey because he had saddled him, his donkey. So there was him, the lion, and the donkey, which is an unusual sight because the lion, he's gonna destroy this animal, and he's not gonna just stand there over this carcass like that. I feel that the way that they leave this sepulcher, it says that they went out and fled from the sepulcher. No, they're running. It's like, it gives the image that they're almost running for their life. And, they spoke to no man, for they were afraid. I kind of see it like this. Another story in the Old Testament is when, Elisha, he gave the promise of a son to this lady, and she had the son. He would always pass by there. She made him actually a room and a bed and a lamp and a table. He asked her, what would you like? You have done such a nice thing for me. She said, I have no child. He said, next year, this time, according to the time of life, thou shalt bear a son. Well, the son, he died at a young age. He was with the father. I believe they were, chopping down trees. And he said, my head, my head. The son died. When news came to him, he sent his servant with his staff saying, salute no man, by the way. Just go run and then lay the staff upon the child. It didn't work. He had to come himself and lay himself upon the child, and then the child came back to life. So that's another instance I see where people, they go and they're not, just deliver the message, speak to no one. Alright, so the next one says, now when Jesus was risen early, the first day of the week, he appeared first unto Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils. Alright, so the first one that sees him, that's not this angel. Did the angel see him? No doubt. He rolled, yeah, he did. Because he rolled back. In another gospel, it said that it was the angel that rolled back the stone. Not that Jesus needed the stone to be rolled back, because as we'll see, when he met with the disciples, he vanished out of their sight. So no doubt he did not need the stone to be rolled back. So when he rolled it back, no doubt the angel saw him when he came out. So now he's appearing first unto Mary Magdalene, because out of all his followers, all the things that he has done for people, she has given back the most right now. And he says, faith without which is impossible to please God. God is a God of faith, not, doubt or fear. And even though he just gave Simon Peter a special message, tell the disciples and Peter that, behold, I go before you into Galilee. This goes to show you that God, he rewards action, he rewards motion, most importantly. Because no doubt, she was just as sad as they were. She also loved them. No doubt she was feeling it heavy. But she did not let this stop her from moving. And this just goes to show you that no matter, because, they had the titles. They were the apostles. They were ordained by him. She wasn't ordained by him. But, he appeared unto her first because she was in motion. As much as the pain she was feeling, which paralyzed these other the disciples. It was them that were sent out two by two, given power over unclean spirits to perform to heal all manner of sickness and disease and cast out devils, perform all manner of miracles. It was them that were ordained, and it was them that would carry the gospel when he leaves. But this just goes to show you, not always the one with the title that's at the closest to God's heart. When David was anointed king, Samuel went down to the house. 6 brothers were brought out. They forgot about David, who was in the field looking after the sheep. Samuel would say, the Lord had not chosen this one. No, not this one either. He had not chosen this. When he got done seeing all 6 of them, he said, are these all your children? Is there not yet any more? Because they had the rank. In those days, status was really great. And, the firstborn, they would get birthright and they would get the majority of the wealth. So David, he did not have the rank in man's eye to receive, this anointing to be king. And no doubt it was always the firstborn that was, given such a right. So in this moment, his heart is closest to Mary Magdalene. Like I said, out of whom he cast 7 devils out. So I already told you the story, about the 2 men that owed 150, 500. When he forgave them both, who loved him the most? The one that he forgave the most. And like I said, her story is not, mentioned officially in the Bible. It's only the aftermath. Like, they'll mention her name and say, out of whom he cast 7 devils. It's always like that. They don't say, well, he was walking one day and, he saw her foaming at the mouth or making any weird noises, or they brought her to him. It was just, after the fact. The actual incident is not given. All right, so the last one says, and she came and told them that I had been with him while they mourned and wept. So now here she is bringing this news that she saw him and that he is risen. So now in this, translation here, there's a blank, a gap in the timeline. Because we just saw them go to the sepulcher. They saw the angel. He told them, go and tell the disciples this message. And they were running, afraid, not wanting to speak to any man. So now we're seeing on the first day, which was the first day. They were on the first day. When they went to the sepulcher and saw the angel, that was the first day. But now it's saying that he appeared first unto her. So now, was this while they were running in the way? Was this when, after or before she delivered the news to them? Was it, before on the way and then she told them? Or did she deliver the news and then leave and go about her business and then she saw him? The timeline is uncertain. So, they'll say that because of this, women were the first preachers. For what? What are preachers? In the Old Testament, where they call preachers. In Ecclesiastes, they are. Because it's mentioned, thus saith the preacher, right? Referring to Solomon, even though Solomon himself was not officially, but they were mostly called prophets or seers. It's in the New Testament that we see, preachers in the modern day, saying that, Mary tell them that, he is risen. He is risen. That's a simple message. He is risen. And they say that because of this, women are actually the first preachers. I am Straw Greenhorn.